What about when you visited the Mace Kingsley Ranch School?
Before I was in the Sea Organization, I was about 13, and there was a place called the Mace Kingsley Ranch. It was in Palmdale, about 30 minutes outside of Los Angeles. And it was run by a man named Wally Hanks, who was OT7. He was like one of the highest level Scientologists. He was very well known and revered. And he used to do briefings to people on how to handle their children. And a lot of the children at the Mace Kingsley Ranch were considered problem children. Their parents had gone into the Sea Org and they wouldn't go, or their parents were in Scientology, they didn't want to be in Scientology, or for one reason or another they were considered a problem child. I never was sent there, but I had friends who were, and I went up to visit them a few times. Now, when I went up to visit them, I found out what happened was anyone who acted up, like a boy was found peeping in the girls' room, and just any time you did something wrong, you were paddled. Wally was a very big man, and he had a paddle, and all of us would sit around. This happened the first time I went up there to visit. Sit around on the sofa, and the person who was being paddled stood in the middle of the room, and Wally would paddle them with his paddle, and it would make them cry. And then he would put a little notch on it for paddling them, and that was the punishment. In the evenings, he would build a bonfire and give all the girls and all the boys beer. I was 13 years old, 14, I think I was 13. Everyone had beer and got drunk. I think the first night or the second night I was up there, I was sitting next to him, and I had had a few beers, and so had he, and so had everyone else, and he put his hand on my shirt and down my bra and started feeling me. And it really scared me. And I asked my friend later, I said, "What's Wally doing? Why did he do this?" And she said, "Oh, don't worry, he just does that with the girls. That's just what he does, but don't worry about it."
This guy's running the school?
Yeah, he ran it. From what I know, he owned it, and he definitely ran it with his wife. Another night, he took us camping, and we went out, and we had more beer, and we were camping, and once we'd all had a few drinks, he gave us guns to go practice shooting. So I sat in the dark with a flashlight and a gun, practiced shooting at like cans and thing after I'd had a few beers
What
to
kind
drink.
of guns?
Just like handguns. Oh, and rifles. We did rifles earlier in the day before we drank, and then we did handguns in the evening. That one time that he put his hand on my shirt was the only time he did that to me, but later on, when I was in the Sea Organization, when I was the Director of Inspections and Reports, I came across some reports on him. He had been found out that he'd been doing these things, but he had done a lot worse than what he'd done to me. He had really badly molested several girls.
How do you mean?
Like, felt down their pants and had them pee on his car or on someone's car, and just...
What do you mean, pee on the car?
He got off by seeing them pee on cars. Told them to pee on cars, and they would do it for him because they had to, or...
They might be drunk.
He got them drunk, had them pee on cars,
God.
felt them, and I don't know if he actually had intercourse. I don't remember if he actually had intercourse with anyone, but, you know, up to that point, really bad molesting.
What happened? What happened to him?
Well, because he was an OT7, they said they weren't going to declare him officially because it would be bad public relations for people to hear that an OT7 molested children and got declared. So they quietly ousted him from the church. They quietly said he's declared.
But did they report him to the authorities?
No, they never reported him. At least not to my knowledge. These reports said nothing about it. They said it was a handling. It's like he's been doing this, and what we're going to do is we're going to oust him, but we're not going to officially declare him. We're not going to tell people about it because it's bad public relations because he was an OT7.
What about the parents of the girls who were molested? Did they do anything about this?
I don't know about that. I don't know what happened. One of the girls was in the Sea Org with me and left, and another one of the girls is still a Scientologist. They're all still Scientologists. And the parents probably were told, well, we're ousting him for the church. And that's considered a handling.
Incredible.
There was another case of that. Before I came to the QI, like the second time, there had been a cadet coordinator there. I've forgotten his name. I mean, I never even met him, but my friend was later telling me how he had molested her. She'd come in with a cut on her leg to his office saying, "Can you fix this? You have a Band-Aid." And he sat her down, and he also felt her up, down her pants. She had been like, I think 11 at that time, And she finally told her mom, and her mom told, like, her mom was totally outraged, and her mom told the church authorities, and they took him off the post of cadet coordinator. I think they put him on the rehabilitation force, the rehabilitation project force, and that was it. He didn't get anything else. They wouldn't report that to the authorities because it would bring attention to their school, and it would be bad publicity for Scientology.
There was another case, too. When I was in the Cadet Orchid Flag, I remember I was about 8. There was a girl who was there who was maybe 13 or 14, maybe 15 or 16. And one of the men, who was an older man, maybe in his 30s, he was in charge of the kids, I think, or he had another job. I don't remember because I was so young, but I remember this happening. He had an affair with her, and she was underage. And he got ousted but not reported. Because I remember I saw him later.
With a 15-year-old?
Yeah, he was like a taxi driver, 15 or 16. Definitely not. He was in big trouble because she was underage, and then you're not allowed to do anything before you're married, and she was underage, but never reported because they just ousted him. They just kicked him out. But they don't want to get in trouble for it, you know, because they're liable for this kind of stuff. Same with the lady who poisoned the little child in L.A. They sent her to the rehabilitation project force instead of reporting her to the authorities because they didn't want the bad public relations.
They often pick, like, the staff members that had, you know, messed up the worst on jobs or had proved the most ineffective and the most irresponsible. They often pick those people to be the nannies and the adults in charge of watching the children, the few adults in charge of watching the children, because the cadet org was considered unimportant and unnecessary, really. Like, it was just children who are taking up their money, and it was yeah, I mean, most of the people that watched me came off the rehabilitation project force for doing something wrong, sometimes sexually wrong, sometimes wrong with the Scientology technology, which was considered very bad. So they put the people that they considered really low and like the worst to watch us. I mean, who knows how bad things got?
There's obviously no background checks, no criminal checks, nothing done. They didn't even do their own checks. Like people who are sent up to INT, or people who go to OSA, or people who work on like the jobs I worked on even, are given special confessionals to make sure they're qualified. They didn't even do their own internal checks on these people. They picked, because it was considered about as important as washing the pots and pans. They put the people they considered the least qualified to watch them. And that was even in a program once. One time they wrote a program to handle it because there was the girl who was suicidal and these other things that were happening, and they were worried they were going to get in trouble legally. They decided they had to do something about it. And it was even written in a program I saw that the people who are the least qualified are the ones put to handle the children. But
the program actually stated this?
It stated that, and then but they never handled it because it's very typical in Scientology. They write these long programs with these long handlings that are impossible to do, that can't get done because they don't have the resources and they don't have the ability, and all their policies act against each other. The programs never get done.
Mm-hmm.
So it never got sorted out.
I just wonder how many things are going on in Scientology like this that aren't being reported because Scientologists are forbidden to go outside the organization.
I mean, the things I said are just the things I know about, and I certainly don't know everything.
I would guess with children that over 20 instances of molestation or serious abuse of like hitting them or like slapping them around to unconsciousness have happened. Over 20, I bet.
And then there's the whole
like
point
really
on
serious.
Then there's the whole point on abortion and coercing into abortion. For example, after I left and I had my daughter, my brother's wife got pregnant. She was just a year or two older than me. She was one of my best friends when I was there. She got pregnant so that she could leave, and she thought my brother would go with her. She thought he wanted to leave. She wanted to leave very badly. My brother called me up and told me he was trying to convince her to get an abortion. He was very upset because she wouldn't. Why he's telling me this, I don't know. I just had a child. But he's telling me all this, and I was very happy for Dee, even though she's going to go through the same thing of having to raise the baby by herself. I was happy. I had said to my dad, I said, I know Dee's unhappy and I know she's going to leave. And a few months later we heard that she did. And she never said a word, but you can just tell, you know. So she was going to leave, and then she was just going to leave without him because he refused to go with her. He was going to not go. And when she was 4 months pregnant, he called me up and told me that he had convinced her, and she'd gone and gotten he'd taken her to go get an abortion.
He was all happy about it.
And he was happy about it. And he said at first, this was the day after, he said at first I was upset, but now I'm okay because I know it was the best thing. Then my mom called, and Zoe was very upset about it, and I was too, but Zoe says to my mom, Dee just got an abortion, and my mom says, oh, good.
God.
Yeah, my mom, you could hear relief in her voice. She was like, oh, good, the problem's solved. And I said,
we were just in shock.
I said, Mom, do you realize what you're saying? I was like, Dee got an abortion. I said, on a baby that was half grown. I said, it had a heartbeat already. It had a fingerprint. And I was like, it would have been Kate's cousin. I kept trying to, like, describe, like, how, you know, like, she sounded
Does this make
like
you feel
someone
anything?
that wasn't human. And, yeah, and she was like, and she instantly kind of changed. She's like, well, you know, these things, and, you know, these things happen, but it was all for the greatest good. It was all to forward Scientology so Dee could keep working for Scientology. That's all that mattered, even though, you know, a little baby was put to death. I mean, I'm not against all abortion or anything. I just think that in this case, Dee wanted the baby. You know, she purposely got pregnant so she could have this baby and leave. And my brother just ruthlessly went after her and convinced her. And you know, Astra described her state of mind to me. You know, she was kind of wobbly, and I'm sure that's how Dee was. And he just went after that and went after her vulnerable points and convinced her. And she just had her baby killed.
Kate's so lucky that
Yeah.
nobody was able to convince her.
Well, I was lucky because I had my dad. I knew I had somewhere to go. She didn't have the support. Plus, she wanted my brother to go with her. She was in love with him. She thought he'd go with her. I was fine. I wanted to leave my husband. We didn't want to be married anymore. So it was very hard for her. She left anyway. I don't know what happened, but one time I asked, where is she? Because I went to speak to my brother, and they said, oh, she doesn't work here anymore. So I don't know what happened. But I knew of other girls who got abortions. There's an older lady who was about 40, and she already had a couple children who were grown, and they were in the Sea Org, and she got pregnant, and she's like, oh, I have to get an abortion, and she just went off and got it. And another girl got pregnant, and she had to borrow some $300 to go get an abortion. They were all sent to Planned Parenthood to get the abortions.
Planned Parenthood in LA.
Yeah. And, I mean, it's not even a matter of pro-choice or pro-life. But, I mean, even if you're pro-choice, it's not a choice when someone's making you do it, you know?
It wasn't like...
I mean, the law is that you may get an abortion, and, you know, that's fine, because in some cases it's warranted. But, like, if someone's raped or something, but these people are, like, wearing you down for months while holding you prisoner, saying you have to get an abortion. And it's just unbelievable to me. It's unbelievable.
It's tragic.
Yeah. I mean, it's the only church that I know of in the world that gets people to get an abortion. It's only because they don't want to deal with the financial difficulty of it.
Or the production distraction.
Yeah. And it's so backwards because this is another example of the policies conflicting. L. Ron Hubbard says there are 8 dynamics in your life. The second dynamic has to do with family and procreation. And he says that if you don't have all your 8 dynamics, you know, working in alignment, if you're not happy and successful on all of those, you can't survive on any of them. Yet, you're not allowed to have children.
I remember at 12 years old, I was suddenly like, oh, I read the rule, and suddenly I'm 12 years old, and I already know I can't have children.
Yeah.
That was just a shock.
When that rule came out, my post was the Director of Inspections and Reports, and all the staff were put in one room and given a briefing on this new policy. And I was under orders to stand there and look and see who got upset about it, and then take them to ethics and handle them. And that's what I had to do. And there were several people who were like, and I'm sitting here like, I want children, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Having to handle people on wanting children. It was just unbelievable to me.